Wonderful. Good afternoon, Sophie, and good afternoon, everyone. So yes, I thought, as Sophie said, I would start by sharing a short presentation with you about me as an engineer and about me and the sort of things I'm interested in and how I became an engineer and a bit about what the Civil Aviation Authority does. So hopefully I'm going to be able to find that for you. He's looking for it on his screen. There we are. So hopefully, Sophie, you can see this now.
Yeah, we can see it, yeah.
Great. Well, let me just tell you a bit about this. So as Sophie said, my name is Ben Alcos. I'm the International Director at the Civil Aviation Authority. And I thought I'd start with just a few words about what does the CA do? And I thought I'd use this picture of an aeroplane because what we do at the Civil Aviation Authority is make sure really that everything in aviation is safe enough for people to travel on. So we make sure that the aeroplane in this picture is safe enough for you to fly on, that the engines have been designed properly and are safe enough to power the aircraft, that the pilot has got the right training, that the engineer who works on it has got the right training as well, actually, and that the air traffic controller is making sure that the pilot knows where he is and is in the right place in the sky is properly trained as well, and that the airport that you arrive at is safe. So it's all about making sure the entire system is safe for people to use. We also do a similar thing for security. So when you go through security at the airport next time, excuse me, we are responsible for making sure that that process works properly, that the people who are checking you and the machinery they're using is made to the right standard and is effective at making sure that the system that you're going to go flying in is secure for you to use. We've just started doing that for space now as well. So we're making sure that rockets that are going to take off from the UK are going to be safe to be operated, that they're hopefully not going to come down the wrong place, that they're safe to deliver the satellites up into orbit that we need, and that the airports that they're going to use, like Newquay and 3 in Scotland, are safe to be used for that activity. And finally, when you go on holiday next abroad, if you are lucky enough to go abroad, then you might talk to your parents about whether your holiday is at all protected. Because that's the other thing we do. We make sure that you're protected if your holiday company goes bust, and it will be us that make sure you get to fly home safely and securely rather than being left where you were on holiday. So that's sort of what the Civil Aviation Authority does. And I've been lucky enough to be involved in lots and lots of those things over the years. So a little bit more about who I am, what I do. I'm an engineer, so I trained as an engineer. I went to university to do engineering, having really enjoyed STEM subjects when I was at school. And I've worked for the Civil Aviation Authority now for 22 years. But my background was learning how to design and build and test jet engines for aircraft. So jet engines exactly like the ones on this picture. So I spent a long time understanding how these were designed, how they worked. And the one on the right-hand side of these two pictures is one called the BR715, which I spent well over a year working on, living in Germany. And I spent a lot of time on a test bed with this, making sure that it worked properly before we allowed it to go onto an aeroplane. But in the job I do now at the Civil Aviation Authority, my job now is to lead a team of nearly 100 people whose job it is to make sure that we help people in our country, but also across the rest of the world to stay safe when they're flying. So we work with other civil aviation authorities all over the world to help them improve what they do. We help them improve the training of their pilots and engineers. We help them examine their pilots and engineers as well. So we test them to make sure that they are competent to do the job properly. And we just help them get better. We investigate safety incidents and make sure that they don't happen again. And we do that. We've worked in about 140 countries all over the world to do that. So I've had plenty of opportunities through being an engineer and doing STEM subjects to travel all over the world with my job. In terms of my family, I have a son, as I say here, who's 14, a daughter. In fact, my son's 15 now. He was born on Christmas Day, so he's just 15 a few weeks ago. And a daughter who's 11. They both love playing cricket, and I love taking them sailing. And I love flying, which was why I got into engineering, really. I was in the Air Cadets, and I was very lucky to fly both the types of aeroplane you can see on the screen here. One is a glider. The white one is a glider without an engine. And I got to spend a lot of time flying those and got my pilot's license in those. And then the one on the right is a Harrier jump jet, which used to be an aircraft that the Royal Air Force used. And I was lucky enough to get a flight in one of those, but that was with a properly qualified RAF pilot. That wasn't on my own. But this is what I love to do as hobbies. Sailing is my main one, and these are my two boats. So the bigger one on the left, I sail with my family, and the smaller one in the top right, I just sail with my daughter. But one of the things I love about sailing is there's loads of STEM in sailing and loads of engineering and maths and thinking about science, because how the boat stays in the water, how the sails power you along, how you steer, all of those things are really related to science and technology and engineering subjects. And I just think that's brilliant. And it's one of the things I love most about sailing, is that link back to STEM, as well as just loving being on the water and just being out there with the elements. And as I said, my children both love playing cricket, which is why the picture of the cricket bat and ball is up there. There's loads of science and engineering in that as well, about how the ball comes off the bat and how bats really give the batsman the power to hit huge, great sixes over into the crowd. And I really enjoy it. I love just sitting in the sunshine, watching my son and my daughter play cricket in the summer. And lastly, Bournemouth Football Club. I was born and brought up in Bournemouth, and I'm a massive fan of Bournemouth, and my son and I travel around the UK watching Bournemouth play whenever we can. And if any of you have seen people like Ronaldo hit a football or hit a free kick and score an amazing goal with the ball bending around a defence, that is also STEM. So why did I become an engineer? Well, I loved maths and science at school, but I just thought they were great and really interesting subjects. As I've said already, I loved aeroplanes and flying, and I like making things. I also like taking them apart, and they didn't always go back together as I had first taken them apart. So they didn't always work again when I took them back together the first time, but I like them finding out why and working out what I'd done wrong. And I'm just really curious about how things work. And I think if any of you are curious about how things work, then STEM subjects and science and engineering really are something that you should be considering. But there's lots of things you could do in aviation as well. You could become an engineer, you could become a pilot, you could become an astronaut now, which is really people like UK astronauts, American astronauts, Russian cosmonauts, Tim Peake from the UK, all have some sort of science and engineering type background. You could be an air traffic controller and help pilots understand where they are and make sure they get around the world safely. You could be designing them, or you could be doing something for the environment and helping aviation get greener and cleaner, and making sure that we can continue traveling around the world and visiting our friends and visiting all sorts of amazing different countries and cultures, but doing it in a way that isn't a threat to the environment around us. So there's loads and loads of opportunities in aviation for people who've got STEM type qualifications. So that's it in terms of my presentation, Sophie. I hope that was okay and giving insight, a bit of an insight into me and what I do and into the Civil Aviation Authority.
That was lovely. Thank you so much. I'm sure everyone really enjoyed that. I'm sure we had some football fans probably booing or screaming for Bournemouth. Just a reminder, everybody, if you want to get some questions in, you can use the Q&A box and they'll come through to me, which I can then ask to Ben. But in the meantime, we have some other reserve questions that I'm also interested in. So I'll just go ahead and start, if that's okay, Ben?
Sure.
Lovely. So we've got, first of all, how many other roles have you had in the CAA, or is this your only role?
Oh, no, I've had probably 6 or 7 different roles. The CAA is brilliant because it touches every bit of aviation. So although I joined to do jet engine work, which I'd come from Rolls-Royce doing, I then got to work in safety data. So I was looking at thousands of incidents during the year and helping industry and the CAA work out how we could stop them happening again. I ran our personnel licensing team, so deciding who should have pilot licenses and engineer licenses, and trying to make sure we did that really smoothly and quickly so that the industry could operate properly. I've run change programs, and now I lead a big international team. So lots and lots of different things.
Do you think when you first started the CAA that this was kind of a goal for you to get to this point, or did you have a kind of other path you would have liked to go down and this is the one you've ended up on?
It wasn't an exact goal. I mean, I love jet engines and I still do now. When I'm together with any of my former colleagues who have got a jet engine background, that's really all we talk about. But I really liked what the CAA was about. I liked the fact that the Civil Aviation Authority was there to keep people safe. And I started getting interested in other things like management and leadership, and thought I had a good background to do those things, because I think science and engineering give you good skills in thinking logically and planning and executing plans and explaining complex things to people. I think engineering and science give you a really good understanding of how to do that. And those are lots of skills I use every day still in leading people and managing teams.
Lovely. So we've got some questions coming in now from the school, which is really exciting. So we have one here. How are your designs helping to look after the environment?
Oh, that's a great question. So aircraft have generally got better and better environmental performance every year. So organizations and companies like Airbus and Boeing and Rolls-Royce, who I'm sure everyone has heard of, put a lot of effort into trying to burn less fuel, trying to create less drag on the aircraft, and all those things mean that they'll be burning less aviation fuel in the first place. At the CAA, part of our job is to then design rules for the future that make them greener. So we're looking at rules now that will mean we can have electric technology, battery-powered aircraft, hydrogen-powered aircraft, and keep, with the current type of aircraft and engines, keep every year making them be slightly better and greener. At the moment, in the next few years, we'll be looking at how we get more what we call sustainable aviation fuel into the system. So aviation fuel made from things like waste plastic and waste vegetable oil from the cooking industry and food industries.
And do you think that's achievable within the kind of near future? What kind of time frame do you think we're looking at there before we can kind of say that aviation is good, helping the environment?
Yeah, well, we're tied into the government's own goals for 2050.
Yeah.
So we're looking to be net zero by 2050, which I'm sure everybody's heard that target talked about. There's a lot we need to do in the meantime. Short haul, what we call short haul flights, so going to places like Europe and other places in the UK. We think that battery technology and hydrogen technology is really the way forward. Flying to Australia and other places that far away, that's going to be much more of a challenge. And I'm not sure that we haven't solved all the problems, all the engineering problems we need to solve to make that happen yet. But that's one of the things that makes it such an exciting career, is there's still lots and lots of really exciting challenges and problems to solve that we haven't really understood yet.
Lovely. And we've got a really nice question here. Are you proud of what you do?
Yeah, I'm really proud of what I do. I'm really proud of what my team does and what the Civil Aviation Authority does. I mean, I love aviation partly because of the technology, as you can probably tell, but also because it connects people. You know, it connects people around the world. It allows us to go and see our family and friends. It allows us to go and live abroad and still come back to see family and friends. And it can move our goods around the world really quickly. You can get stuff delivered from China in 24 hours, and if it's really important to you, and food from all over the world that allows us to eat. So I'm proud of what aviation does for the world, and I'm proud of what we do in the CAA to try and help people stay safe and secure.
And did you always know that you wanted to be an engineer when you were younger, or is this something you discovered as you got a little bit older?
I always knew I was interested in science and technology and maths and how things worked. My school friends still joke with me now that I could never, if they used to joke with me and by asking me seriously how something worked and then laughing as I insisted on explaining to them how it worked. So I've always loved science and technology and how things work, and that then naturally led into GCSE subjects and A-level subjects and a degree that was in engineering.
And did you always want to go into aviation engineering, or was it something maybe slightly different at one point, or has that always been the end goal?
I think so. I've almost tried to escape a few times. I was in the Air Cadets when I was a kid, and I fell in love with flying and aviation then, I think. And although I have tried jobs in other industries, in engineering contracting and in chemical engineering, I've always found myself coming back to aviation, and for the last 25 years, I've not left.
I'm sure you're appreciated, clearly. What subjects did you take at A-level? Is one of the questions from the schools.
I did maths, physics, and computing science.
That's very brainy. And another school question, what would you do if you were unable to solve a problem? Who could you turn to for help?
Well, I have a fantastic team who work with me who have got all sorts of different qualifications and experiences, whether it's language experiences or worked in different types of engineering. So I'd always turn to them first. But we also go and talk to the industry. You know, people like Rolls-Royce have solved a lot of the problems we're interested in, so we'll go and talk to them. And I have lots of international colleagues in other aviation authorities all over the world who I can turn to as well.
Lovely. And what would you say to those who want to be an engineer now? Because, you know, we're all very aware that engineering is not always spoke about as broad as it should be. You know, people, and especially pupils now, they don't necessarily know all of the options. What would you say to people who would maybe be inspiring by you right now?
I would say go for it. There are so many opportunities in so many different areas, whether it's, for me, there's engineering in everything. There's engineering in the software package that we're talking to each other through right now, the screens we're looking at, the computers on our desks that are driving it all. The internet is all about engineering. If you're interested in buildings, that's all about engineering. So engineering is aviation that inspired me, but I think if you're interested in how things work and solving problems, then there'll be a branch of engineering that is for you, I think.
It's really interesting to say that, because a lot of people kind of talk about just their role, but the fact you're saying there's engineering really in everything is really interesting to hear.
From the time I get up, you know, the alarm clock that wakes me up,
figuring out how it works.
Yeah, the radio that I listen to when I'm having my breakfast in the morning, to my computer, the car I drive to the office when I go to the office these days, to all the equipment I use and the aeroplanes I fly in. That everything's got an aspect of engineering to it.
I'm sure your kids are never short of questions either. Let's have a look at the questions we've got here. We've got, what is the most difficult project you've ever worked on?
Oh wow! I think probably the jet engine I was designing in Germany was probably the most difficult technical project I've worked on. It was a brand new engine and for a brand new aircraft type as well. So there were lots of unknowns about it that we had to solve as we went along, which meant we had to do a lot of testing. So we did the designs. I modelled it on a computer and made sure it looked right on the computer. But then we had to build one, put it in a test environment, in a big huge, great like hangar that we put the engine in, and then we have to run it and make sure it does what we thought it would do when we designed it. And I think that's probably the most difficult technical project. But as I said, I do a lot of leadership and management stuff now, so I've run some big change projects as well that are difficult for different reasons, because you're trying to help people understand how to do their job differently, and why it's going to be better doing it the way that you'd like them to do it in the future. So some of those can be quite challenging as well.
And just on the subject of, now that you're in leadership and management, do you find that it's less hands-on than when you used to be more, or in your previous roles?
Yeah, it is a lot less hands-on. And it's a choice I think you make as an engineer. There'll come a point when you'll likely have a choice of whether you want to stay really deeply technical or whether you want to move into leadership and management. And I've got lots of friends that are jet engine engineers who've chosen the other path and stayed very, very technical. I love the technology, but I loved working with technical people and I love helping people develop. So one thing that's been great about my career at the CA is I've still been working with technical people every day. So whilst I'm not so hands-on, I get to stay fairly close to the technology still.
Right. And we've got some more questions coming in. We've got, how much, and this one will come up, how much does it cost to build an aircraft and how do they stay in the sky?
Oh, millions and millions and millions of pounds to build an aircraft, hundreds of millions of pounds to build an aeroplane, and billions to design one from scratch. It's a very expensive thing to do, which is why you have to sell quite a lot to then make some money out of it. But how do they stay in the sky? Well, that's a really interesting question. So they stay in the sky because they fly in air. That's the main thing. They have to be flying in air to stay in the sky in the way they do, which is why rockets are different. Maybe we'll touch on rockets in a second. But in terms of aeroplanes, it's the wings that are really keeping them up there. And the way that the wings are designed means that you get a lower pressure on the top of the wing than you do on the bottom of the wing. And that effectively is sucking the wing upwards into the air. And it's balancing that amount of sucking up, the lift, we call it, into the air with the weight of the aircraft is what allows it to stay up there. So if you want to go higher, you have to generate more lift than the weight of the aircraft, and that will let you go up. If you want to come down again, of course, you have to make sure you have to slow the aircraft down and generate a little bit less lift, otherwise you'd never come back down again. With rockets, it's slightly different. You have to use a lot of energy. You will have seen rocket takeoffs, I'm sure, on the television, and all that energy is about pushing the aircraft to get the rocket against gravity to get it up into the air. But they don't have wings in the same way, but the wings are the critical bit to staying in the air.
Fab. And we've got, let's have a look. Can you get into engineering through art-based subjects rather than maths and physics?
You can do, in fact, well, for example, our head of innovation, who is looking after how we are working with companies that are building new drones, who are building new electric, really exciting personal mobility vehicles that we may see flying people around our cities in the future. He's a lawyer by degree, not an engineer. So whilst I would say if you want to actually get into the maths of engineering, the mechanics of it, the metal of it, how strong things need to be and where bolts need to be, that probably does need quite a lot of engineering background. But there are lots of other ways to get into engineering. Actually, the people who draw things for the first time, so if you think about car designs and how they all look so different, the first person who ever drew that car that your parents drive around in was an artist. They had to think about, what does our car need to look like? What is going to be appealing to people? What's going to make it look like a really nice thing to be in? So often with engineering, there's an artist right at the very start of the process who's drawn something that the engineer's job, who has got the science and technical background, our job is then to turn that into something that's in real life. But there's lots of art in engineering as well.
And just kind of on the subject of that, so you say obviously, you know, creations start with an artist. What is the process of building a plane? Where does it start and then where does it finish? I mean, it finishes in the sky, but where does it start?
With an aircraft, it'll normally start with, what do we want this aeroplane to do? So if any of you have been to an airport or flown on holiday, you might have noticed that the aircraft are all different sizes and shapes, certainly different sizes. They're all actually pretty much the same shape, but lots and lots of different sizes in particular. So the first thing we have to work out is, what do we want this particular aircraft design to do? How far do we want it to fly? How many people do we want it to carry? What countries do we want it to go to? And once we've made those sort of decisions, that will tell us a lot about how much fuel will it need to carry. And once we know that, we can start to understand, with the number of people that it needs to carry as well, what sort of size will it need to be? And then we can get a basic idea of what the aircraft might need to look like. So it will always start with, what do we want this aircraft for?
So for your kind of, I say average plane, but you know, the plane that will take probably most of us on holiday, is that kind of a generic blueprint, and it's kind of, this is what we want the plane to do, so we build it like this?
To some extent, yeah. For those sort of things that will take you on holiday to places like Spain and Greece, those sort of size of aircraft, they all carry around about 200 people, and they all look pretty similar. There will, if you're really into it, you will have noticed little differences, like maybe winglets on the end of the wings, that particular company give it slightly less fuel consumption, which makes it a bit more environmentally friendly and reduces the cost as well of operating it. But because we understand a lot these days around how airflow flows over aeroplanes and what generates lift, they all do look somewhat the same once we understand what sort of distances we want them to fly and how many people we want them to carry.
Lovely. And is there something you're currently working on? What is the current project that's going on?
So wow. So at the moment, well, I'll give you a few that my teams are working on. So we're working with Uganda in Africa on helping them bring a brand new Airbus aircraft into service, and helping them understand how to do that safely. So that's a big safety project.
Wow.
We're just about to start doing all the pilot and engineer exams in Pakistan, because they've asked us to come in because they think we can do it and do a really good job and make sure their system is really effective at qualifying pilots. So that's more on the sort of supporting regulator side. We are also working with two companies in the UK who are producing aircraft that are going to be powered by hydrogen and electric motors. And we're working with them to understand what their risks are and how we're going to write new rules that will allow them to prove to us that they are safe, so that we can bring them into service, and hopefully within 5 or 6 years we'll see them flying around the skies.
Yes, definitely, hopefully. How has the COVID outbreak and obviously the whole pandemic affected aviation? And what have we done or what have you done to make planes safe?
It's been really hard for aviation, as you can imagine, as you will have heard lots of change in the news. I'm sure lots of articles about the limitations on aviation, which countries you can and can't go to, who's on a green list, an amber list, or a red list.
Yeah.
It's been really difficult, and we've seen in the first lockdown, we saw almost total stoppage of all aviation activity for a while. So no one was flying anywhere. And even now, we're still only seeing about 50 to 70% of the flights that we had in 2019 before the pandemic. So it's very, very hard for the industry, and very, very hard for airlines like airlines like EasyJet and TUI and others, and the airports like Gatwick and Heathrow, because they're not seeing the people come through, and that's how they make their money. So very, very difficult for aviation, not just in the UK, but across the whole world. And obviously very difficult for people who were stranded overseas or have missed out on visiting relatives and having holidays that we all enjoy.
Oh, yeah.
By aviation as well. In terms of what we've done to keep aviation safe, actually, I was involved in a project to introduce some new public health measures in airports. So some increased cleaning regimes, mask wearing, perspex screens, the ability to isolate people who were presenting symptoms in the airport. We have mask wearing on aeroplanes unless you're eating. Aircraft filters are actually very good that clean the air, are actually very good at taking the virus out already. So transmission on the aircraft is actually quite limited. But yeah, we've had to put in a lot of new cleaning and separation regimes into airports and into airlines to help aviation be safer.
Yeah, we can imagine. And obviously, like you say, we would have all seen the news and how hard it has been, and not a fun time, but hopefully looking up. We've got a couple of little personal questions now, which I think would be nice. We've got, how did you feel the first time you flew alone in the glider?
Oh, it was an amazing experience. It's difficult to explain. I didn't stop smiling for the whole way down. There were two things. In fact, I didn't stop smiling, and I'll admit something to you that I've not admitted to anybody else. I sang a lot on the way around because it was so quiet. If you ever get the chance to go gliding, I would thoroughly recommend it. It's an incredible experience, and I get the same sort of thrill out of sailing now because of the quiet. Once the engine's turned off on the boat, it's very, very quiet, other than the noise of the wind. It's the same in a glider. So it's exciting because there's no engine, so it's just you and the elements. But yeah, I found it a lovely experience. But yeah, very strange being on your own somewhere so quiet up in the air.
And where's the best place that you've been sailing, would you say?
I think probably sailing across the Irish to Ireland. So I've done what's called the Fastnet race, which is a long race, about 600 miles, that goes all the way from the south of England all the way over to Ireland and back again, and crossing the Irish Sea a few times. When you're outside of land for 2 or 3 days is probably the best sailing I've done. Although around the world, the best I've done is in Chile. I've got a very good sailing friend who lives in Chile now. He has sailed halfway around the world on a boat on his own, but now lives in Chile. And I went and raced for a week with him around some Chilean fishing villages on the coast near where he lives. And that was probably the most amazing sailing I've done.
I was going to say, that does sound wonderful. Okay, so we've got some more questions coming in. Is anybody else in your family an engineer? Or is it just you?
My father is an engineer, much more practical engineer, actually. I was in design, but my father worked for an engineering company, actually doing the actual building, the making and building of big gearboxes for things like tanks and for JCBs and digging equipment and for trains. So yeah, he's also an engineer.
And when you were younger, or even maybe now, did anybody in particular inspire you to become an engineer, or does anybody, aspire you still now?
I think I was pretty inspired by my dad and loved what he did, and in telling me about what he did for a living. I think the rest of it just came from my parents encouraging me because I was interested in it, and I'm sure that's the best thing. If you're interested in something, whether it is art, whether it's geography, whether it's engineering, if your parents then support you and help you continue to be interested in that, then that's great. And I think my experience in the Air Cadets and getting the chance to fly in amazing flying machines also helped inspire me to be an engineer as well.
And we've got a question here. If you were to go back 8 years ago, getting specific, where were you and would you change anything back then for now?
Oh, 8 years ago. Well, 8 to 10 years ago, I was still running a big change project in the CAA. So I looked at how we do regulation and how we oversee the industry, how we make sure the industry is safe, basically. And I decided there was a much better way of doing it. So I designed this new way of doing it, and I'd got the whole company to agree that we should do it. And then they gave me the opportunity to lead a team of 20 people to actually change all of our processes, all of our procedures, all of the way we train our regulators to do that job. And I was halfway through that, and I certainly wouldn't change that, because that's become a real standard. And actually, we've convinced other regulators around the world to do the same thing.
Now, I've got a question here that I actually don't understand, but I'm hoping you may. And it says, are they looking into using graphene in aeroplanes?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer, other than graphene, for the person who answered it probably knows, it's a brilliant conductor of electricity. So graphene is a very, very thin material that is an amazing conductor, almost no resistance to electricity passing through it at all. So I suspect yes, the answer is yes, but it will probably be in places you don't see. So it will be inside the computers that help aeroplanes fly, because like everything we use these days, including our washing machines and dishwashers, they're all run by computers and by microchips, and aeroplanes are no different. So I suspect the answer is a definite yes, that we'll see graphene inside the microchips that are inside the computers that make sure that aeroplanes can fly.
Lovely. Let's see what else we've got coming in here. We've got, what are the most exciting parts of your job, do you think?
The most exciting parts of my job now are probably, I think, dealing with new technology and innovators. So people, small companies who are making really exciting new products, as I say, like personal mobility vehicles powered by electric fans and electric aeroplanes and hydrogen-powered aeroplanes. Dealing with them is really, really exciting. I get really excited about just what my team achieve and helping other regulators around the world. And when they come back saying they've had a great trip to Uganda or Kazakhstan or Pakistan or wherever they've been, I get really excited about that, because if they come back with a big smile on their face and I know that we've helped another country do their job better with the expertise that we've got, then that makes me really happy too.
And has your job obviously I know you've been saying that you would go to all these different places, but has your job taken you anywhere really memorable abroad?
I think the most exotic or out of the way place that I never thought I'd go would probably be Mongolia.
Right.
I never thought I'd go to Mongolia, and we went to somebody with a better geography degree than me is going to tell me what they're. Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia, and it's an amazing place. There's only 3 million people there, which is less than half the population of London, but it is the second biggest landlocked country on the planet. So it has no sea, it doesn't touch the sea anywhere, but it is huge. I mean, it's almost the size of Europe, massive, massive place with only 3 million people in it. So it's mainly countryside, and it's got huge mountains. The people are absolutely lovely. So I think that's the most exotic place I've ever gone for work.
And we're stepping back a tiny bit now, of course, but obviously we do have some pupils and children watching. So for them, do you think you'd be able to explain what net zero is? Obviously the government's plans.
Yeah, of course. So we calculate the amount of environmental damage done by any industry in terms of their carbon emissions, normally about carbon emissions. So you've heard people talk about carbon dioxide and needing to reduce that. And net zero is what we call the point where there will be zero emissions by that industry. Now, it's not necessarily exactly zero emissions, because what you can do is something called offsetting. So you can also plant trees who absorb your carbon dioxide and emit oxygen, which is a good thing to do. So it means taking the amount of carbon emissions your industry emits and taking away the amount of carbon saving stuff that you're investing in, like growing more trees. And when that equation equals zero, then that's the net zero point.
Lovely. That explanation was also good for me, so that's great. We've got a couple more questions coming in. Are your children interested in engineering? Would you support them to be in an engineering career, or can they do whatever they would like?
Well, they can definitely do whatever they like. My son is quite interested in maths and statistics, but more to do with sport, cricket statistics, football statistics, any sort of sports statistic. But is quite interested in STEM subjects, so he may go in that direction. But he also likes the idea of being a sports journalist. So we're supporting that at the moment and seeing how we could help him understand how to be that.
That's great.
My daughter is really interested in art and makes lots and lots of stuff at home, just out of anything that's lying around. If you leave it lying around for too long, she'll probably build it into something. So I think she may well go into engineering, but I think because she loves art as well, I think maybe the design side of engineering, maybe architecture, so designing buildings, which is a mixture of art and a really real mixture of art and engineering, actually, because you have to be able to draw beautiful buildings, but also understand how the materials would come together to be able to make that building, to be able to make you be able to build that building in the first place.
Well, I mean, it's like you said, there's so many different avenues in engineering. No matter what you kind of do, you could end up there either way. So
yeah, absolutely.
So we've got, what is the most memorable moment in your whole career?
Wow. I think probably the very first time that something that I designed on a jet engine was on the test bed. When you've designed it and you've worked out how it's going to work and you've seen it on the screen, and I've worked out what all the temperatures and pressures were going to be through the engine, and then you get to go and test it for the first time, and somebody trusts you that they're going to spend £500,000 in running this test, and they trust you that they believe that you've got your equations right. That's probably the most memorable moment, when at the end of it, it looks like it probably worked. I think that's probably the most memorable moment.
Lovely. What do you think is the biggest challenge that you have faced and had to overcome?
I think the move from being in sort of direct technical engineering into leadership and management is a challenge. I think the core skills that STEM subjects give you to be a good manager and leader are great, but it is a different thing, and you have to then start learning how to do it well. And I think anybody who goes into STEM understands that. I think that when you get a new like when you get a new technology, you still have to understand how it works and how to then do that well. And leading people and managing people and being in that part of a business instead of directly in the engineering and technical side is a new skill. So I think it was a challenge I decided I wanted to do it, and I knew that STEM had given me the skills to be able to do it well, but it was still quite a big leap to move out of my sort of technical job and start doing something new and be willing to learn how to do something very different.
Yeah. And we've got, would you ever consider going into a different field of engineering? And if so, what? I know you said that you love aviation, you want to stay there, but if you were going to go to a different field of engineering, what would it be?
I think there are two answers to that, actually. I think if I was doing it now, I might choose something more closely linked to the environment, recycling, how we make more out of our natural resources. I think there's some really exciting engineering going on around how we take materials that we've used, all the things that we put in our recycling bins every week, and how we break those down again and turn those back into something useful. And anything to do with wind power and those sort of technologies. So something environmental, probably. If I would be almost as tempted by that now, I think, as aviation. I'm not sure I would still get on aviation, but I think I'd be really tempted by doing something in aviation. And the other thing I'm really interested in is a friend of mine is an engineer who became a patent lawyer. So her job is to look at new designs and make sure that companies can protect them properly from other people copying them. And I think that's a really interesting thing, that she started at Loft Life as an engineer and then has gone into got an extra qualification in the law that allows her to make sure that companies don't have other companies who just copy their stuff without giving them the proper rights and monies for doing that. So again, another bit of engineering that involves engineering in the law. But I think for me, probably out of those two, I'd want to do something more environmental.
Just goes to show there really is no limits. You know, if you go from engineer and then obviously to get another qualifications, become a patent lawyer, that's just fantastic. Okay, so let's see what else we've got. We've got a question here, again, unsure. This is a bit off topic, but do you think we have reached peak oil?
Oh, I don't know is the answer. I think that we're probably close to peak oil of the oil that's easy or fairly easy to get out of the ground. There are lots of other oil reserves around the world, but they get harder and harder to get at. You have to put more and more energy into getting them out of the ground, which makes them less and less interesting. And I would sort of hope that we're close to it just from an environmental point of view. If we can do the right things with new nuclear technology for power generation coupled with wind technology and solar technology, then hopefully we'll need less of that oil in the future. So I'm hoping that we have reached peak oil because we find other ways of generating energy. The one struggle we've got around oil, I think, and again, go back to the environment, why I think that's really interesting, is how do we replace plastics? Plastics are something that we make out of oil, and plastics are actually massively useful in our lives. They keep our food fresh, and they almost everything you touch has got some form of plastic in. I don't think modern life could really exist without plastics. It's the case on your computer, it's around your screen, it's in your screen, it's everywhere. So if we can find a way of replacing plastic in that, then maybe we just won't need to take the oil out of the ground in the first place.
Lovely. And have you worked on any maybe famous projects, rocket launches, or anything that we may have heard of?
I've probably none that you've heard of, I wouldn't have thought. I've worked on interesting projects for the CAA that Rolls-Royce have been involved in. So some of their really big engines on the sort of aeroplanes that you would go on holiday on to the United States, or long haul type holidays abroad. So I've worked on lots of those, but most people, unless they're real sort of engineering nerds like me, don't really know what the engine type is on the aircraft that they go on holiday on.
And we have got here, let's see, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to the pupils watching?
I would say keep thinking about STEM subjects as something to keep interested in, but always end up doing something that you love.
That's lovely. And I think that's a great possible way to end on as well. We are so thankful that you have come on today, Ben. Genuinely grateful. I'm sure everybody here has enjoyed listening all about aviation and all the challenges and the amazing things that come out of it. And it's really interesting to know that these things go on in the background. It's really great, and I'm sure we've learned a lot. So thank you so much for coming on today and tell us about yourself. That's really fantastic. And everybody watching, thank you for joining, and we will see you next week, hopefully at 1:30 again. And just a quick reminder that your entries are due in on March 23rd, no later, so please get them in by then. Remember that this interview will go up on YouTube, so if you want to re-watch and then use Ben as your inspirational engineer, we can do that. Will be great. So thank you so much, and thank you again, Ben.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'll see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.